This here is my full company brain. But what is the difference between a chatbot, a workflow automation, and a real AI agent? In this video, I'm going to walk through so you can fully understand what is out there on the market. Are you going to be falling into a trap that's actually just a chatbot? And how do you know what things you actually need for what specific situations inside your business? There are 3 separate levels to this, and agent right now is really sort of the most powerful tool that you can have with AI. So first of all, quick walkthrough, and then I'm going to sort of break down everything into a lot more detail. So first of all, a chatbot, it's basically just a way that you can talk to a language model, and a language model is basically what we would be calling an AI. Okay, it's just it's a thing that you can just send a message to, and it has its own training data, and it will use that information in order to then give you a response. Sometimes a chatbot can have access to things like the internet, right? It's really good for asking questions, drafting ideas, and just getting a list of information back. A workflow is essentially an automation. So for example, if an email opts in on your website, you can send that email to a database, and then you can ping them a message, or you can send them an email, or I don't know, you can do some fixed task that runs on a loop that just happens over and over and over again every single time a trigger happens. It follows basically predefined steps. So very, very good for repeatable processes. Now you can actually have workflows with agents in them. Okay, and I'll sort of, if I remember, I'll cover that as well in a minute. So agents, which is really kind of what a lot of people are looking at right now, is essentially it's an AI wrapped in a harness that can then do multiple things, go off and do stuff, and it can achieve goals for you. And it uses tools, it uses memory and context to be able to do all of that. So it's essentially a language model with superpowers. So first of all, just quickly, how does a chatbot actually work? Well, a user will send a message to a chatbot like, I don't know, how tall is Mount Everest? And then what happens is that prompt that the user sends through gets sent directly to the model. And the model will say, okay, let's look at that prompt, come up with some sort of response based on what it knows internally based on its training data, and then it will send that back directly to you. And that's it, it'll stop. It won't do anything else. So a chatbot still can be very smart, right? However, it's not going to be able to do tasks for you, okay? An agent is where it can do tasks for you. A chatbot is still incredibly smart. It depends on how recent and how powerful the language model is. The more powerful the language model is, obviously the smarter the chatbot is going to be. So back when ChatGPT first came out, they were pretty dumb, but now a chatbot can do quite a lot of stuff. So the next thing is, how does a workflow actually work? So I kind of covered this thing pretty early on, but essentially you have a trigger. For example, somebody submits a form on your website, and then what it will do is it will do something with that data, like clean it or validate it, and then it will send it somewhere, for example. So, for example, it will call an API, or it could call an AI. So it could send that data directly to a language model to do something with it and then come back. So you could say, I have somebody's filled in a form with a load of information, and then I send it off to, I don't know, GPT-5, and it comes back and it says, this is, gives you a summary or a bullet point list, okay? And then you can maybe automatically take that data and update your CRM, and then, maybe sometimes you can send an email back or something. So that's essentially a workflow. It's a predefined flow that will always happen every single time. So lots of businesses have lots of workflows. I'll give you an example of this. I'll come into my NA10 account for our company. So we actually have a workflow here, and this is basically a more sort of in-depth version of a workflow automation. So we do lots of calls with our customers. We'll have a customer who will have a call with us. We take that transcript, and then we do loads of things with it. I'm not going to go into all the details of how all of this works, but it will then search our AI brain, okay? And it's really, really crucial that you have an AI brain at this point. If you're trying to set up AI in your business, you need one of these. It makes it a superpower. And then says, okay, is this issue something that we're working on or not? If it is or it isn't, it will then have 2 tasks that it can go ahead and do. Go ahead and set it up for our developers to go ahead and build it. It'll save it, and then our developers will work on that thing. So you can then see, for example, if we come into Linear, if I come to custom reported issues, here, for example, these are all issues that customers have reported from calls, for example, that all came through this workflow here. So we're aware of what issues customers are facing, and that means every single time a customer has a call with us, we send it through this workflow, and then we're organizing that data for us to be able to work on. So workflows are still incredibly powerful, and you can actually put an AI into this workflow. So you could have an agent in this workflow do a task for you and then continue with stuff. And that's like a really, really powerful thing to do. So How does an agent actually work? It's very, very sort of like lots of back and forth to explain how an agent works. And realistically, the best way to think about an agent is kind of like a chatbot with lots of extra steps. Okay. And I'm going to probably get some hate for that, but it's probably the easiest way of thinking about it. So for example, right, I could go into an agent, and what we see here is Codex. Okay. So Codex is an agent. Okay. And I actually asked it, I said, can you just come up with can you just create me this whole, everything that you see here? Can you just create this for me? Because I'm going to make a video on it. And it was like, yep, cool, going to go ahead and do it. It created all the stuff. It wrote a file for me. And you can see sometimes it will do things like run commands, right? And an agent will have a goal that it needs to do. So for example, create me a document that does this, or research the market, or build me an app that does this, or build me a feature that does this in my app. Okay. Then what it'll do is it'll take that and be like, okay, now I need to sort of figure out how do I actually do this? And it'll have a reasoning step. So you send a message through, it reasons through what is the next thing we need to actually do to get this thing done. And sometimes it may say, well, actually, in order to get this done, I need to get more context. So for example, if I come into this agent here and I say, how are we going to build a new landing page for Atlas? Okay, and what it will probably do is it'll say, well, if I don't know what Atlas is, I need to go ahead and find out what it is. So I'm going to probably pull the Atlas pull memory. Okay, so we have in here, this here is my business brain, which has information on, this is Atlas that I'm talking about here, right? So what it's doing here is it's actually now reading, it's got various skills and it's running commands to actually go ahead and actually ask this whole brain here to then get the information for me. So I'm giving it a task to do something, and then it can go ahead and do stuff for me. And it realized before it could go ahead and give me a response, before it could tell me, okay, let's start doing the task, it needed to get context first. And then obviously, I'm just going to stop this, but then you could say, go ahead and now build the landing page for me. Okay, so once it then has the context and the reasoning of like the steps that it needs to take, it'll then execute tools. Okay, so for example, search, create a file, edit something, go ahead and access some other software, update something, write some code, run some command on your computer. It can do all sorts of things. These tools are really what makes these agents sort of very, very powerful. I don't know why that's being cropped off, but these tools are what makes the agents really powerful. So for example, you can see here, this here is a command that ran, okay, on my computer. That is a tool. You can see this is another command that ran on my computer, which is again another tool. It could write a file, it could search through files, for example, it could connect to other tools. So for example, if you do /MCP, and we'll make some videos on what MCPs are, you can actually connect it to various other tools. For example, so we've got Posthog, Ahrefs is what we use for SEO research, right? So it can connect to all of these different things, and now it has access to the tool. It's like, okay, what do we do? Let's say we've got this command to build a landing page for our product. It reasons, okay, well, in order to build a landing page for our product, I need to know what the product is. So let's go and get the context. So I'm going to use my business knowledge base, business brain. And this is why having a knowledge base for your company is super important. And if you want to grab access to Atlas, I will leave the link below this video. It's not cheap. It's $150 a month, but it will speed up and make your company a lot more powerful using AI. And then once you have the context, it'll then say, okay, what's the next step I need to do? Let's run some commands. So we're going to go ahead, we've got the information, we're going to go ahead and create a file, and we're going to put some code in that file that is going to be for our website. And then we're also going to maybe use another tool to generate an image to put onto that website, for example. And then what we need to do is actually connect to GitHub, which is another tool, and it can go ahead and do all that stuff for you. And then it'll go ahead and check the result, and if the result isn't good enough, it'll go back and it'll reason again. It'll say, okay, this is good, but it's not quite good enough. And this is kind of at this point, right, here, you can kind of jump in and you can say, stop, you haven't done the thing right. Or you could jump in here, for example. You could say, actually, sorry, let's put that in red so it's easy to see. You could stop here and say, no, this isn't good enough. Okay, go ahead and do some more things. And then you could give it another goal at this point, and then it would go ahead, reason through how to do that new thing and update and improve it, get some more context, run some tools, check the result and do that. Okay. Sometimes again, in this case, it would also say, okay, I'm not sure what to do before I reason through and try and continue this flow. And it would ask you for more information. Okay. So you can interject here, or it will go ahead and ask you for more information. And actually, if you, I'm not going to go into it in this video, but there's a thing called a goal command inside Codex and Claude Code now, which will basically just run this loop here on repeat until it achieves its goal. So if you lay out a goal incredibly well, so for example, right, if you wanted to build an app, if I used CodeSpring and I planned out a full app inside CodeSpring and I mapped out exactly what I want it to do and I put a huge amount of detail and information in here and I'm ready to get going, I could just come into here and I could say, okay, this is the goal I want you to do. Build this app. Read CodeSpring, read my full plan, and then the agent would just go ahead and just do it. And it could run for 10 hours and it won't stop until it's done. You can also interject as well, and it will never ask and escalate to you. That's basically what the goal will do. And then once it's done, it will go ahead and save some useful stuff and information in memory, and then it can store that in the context. So you could say, okay, well, I want to go ahead and design a new landing page. It'll go through that loop, and then I could store that information inside my company brain. Okay, and then next time I come back and I want to build a new landing page, it'll be like, okay, but we've already just built this recent landing page. I can use information from there, and this is like the marketing reasoning as to why we did that, right? And this is why having context is super, super, super important. And exactly what this brain does is very different to a lot of other brains where you'll have a knowledge base out there that will just store information. This actually pulls information in real time. So as stuff is happening inside your business, so for example, if you're on a call with a customer, if you're updating things in a CRM, every time you do that and you move a task from in progress to completed, for example, all of that information is being mapped and pushed into this full knowledge base. So then any AI that is working for you is fully up to date on what's happening inside your business. That's why using something like Atlas, I keep recommending it to everybody. So that's kind of it. That's like essentially the difference between the three of them. Now, this is why business context changes everything, which is, I've kind of already covered this, but essentially all of these things that happen in your business, like calls or emails or SOPs or analytics or changes in what you're working on or customer calls and marketing, all of this information affects how you run your business, what you do and what you operate. So if you, and all of this information is actively happening in the background behind you. Okay, especially if you're just starting a business, right? There's stuff moving around all the time. You're agile all the time. You're changing things all the time. All of this business signals are actually moving around all the time, and it's just data is moving between things. If you just take that data as it's moving, okay, let's just draw it out like this. Okay, so I have an email come in from a customer. Okay. And as an email comes in from a customer, usually what happens is we sit here and we then, we wait for 12 hours or 7 hours or something until customer support wakes up and then sends a response. So the email comes in from the customer, we wait for a bit, the customer waits for a bit, and then we send a response back, right? That's all well and good, but actually what we could do with that is we could set up an agent system where we could say, okay, we're going to have an email comes in from a customer, and forgive my terrible drawing here. Email comes in from a customer, and then what we're going to do is we're going to send that to some sort of workflow, and the workflow is going to be I'm going to check the knowledge base and I'm going to respond to the customer. That's one other option. So the workflow runs and then it responds to the customer. That's a very, very simplistic way of sort of automating customer support. The next thing that we could do is we could say, actually, let's step this up a level. We could say, and so this here wastes customers' time and makes customers angry. This here just annoys customers a bit because they know that the company's active, but they know that they're just getting an automated reply. This here pretends to be a human. So customer sends an email in, and then that hits an agent, okay? And the agent says, okay, what is the best way to deal let's just get rid of that. What is the best way to deal with this customer? Okay, does this customer need human support? Have they asked a specific question that we've already answered before? Do they need a course? Do they need to book in a call? Are they asking for a refund? Should we refund them? So that agent has access to tools. Okay, so the access that it has is and I wouldn't recommend you do this, but it has access to refund people. It has access to, book in a call, for example. It has access to, read some sort of knowledge. Okay, this here is a brain that I've just drawn. So what it's going to do is it's going to say, so you could just let this happen, but the problem is, how does it know what stuff to do? If it doesn't have access to a brain, like how your company usually operates, then it's not going to do things properly. So what we do with Atlas here is, as this happens, right? So as a customer, and I'm just going to select this, I think it's this one, like this. So, oops, hang on. So as a customer sends, and let's just move here so it's clean. So as a customer sends an email, okay, so the customer's email comes in. Been a while since I've used Excalibur. Customer's email comes in. Then what we're going to do is we're going to send that directly to our brain. Okay, customer's emails come in, and now the brain has some sort of understanding of what's happening. But what the brain does, is you can see here, is it starts to connect things. So it could say, so now the brain is thinking, okay, what's the best way of drawing this? This person's asked about a specific feature, okay? They've asked about a specific feature, and the brain knows over here that it has access to, there's information it has on the academy. That says academy. Oh my God. That says academy, right? So for example, we have the CodeSpring Academy, like all of these courses in here teach people how to use AI and build things, right? And if we come into here, I can actually do, I could ask it a question, or I could actually zoom in. I'll show you this visually. Here we have the CodeSpring Academy, okay? So I don't know if you can see that text, but that says CodeSpring Academy, okay? So it could say, well, I know I have the Academy, and this question has been asked for, like this customer has asked about the Academy. So then it's now saying, okay, we have this information about the Academy. We know, okay, we have this course that does this thing. We have this course that does this thing. Oh, and this course that does this thing connects to, for example, this feature, okay? That says feature. So this customer has come in, they've asked about a feature. We've sent that to the brain, we've added the customer request to the brain, and what it does here is it adds, let's just do this in orange, it adds a blob, right? And it draws a connection. It says, okay, well, this customer, okay, this is going to be X at Y.com. I need to get a stylus. So this customer has come in asking for help on a specific feature, and we know that that specific feature is linked to this specific course because it already knows that this course here is also linked to that. So it links this customer to the Academy and also to the course. It knows that customer is looking for that thing, and it logs the time, and it logs the date, and it logs the thing that they're asking and how serious the issue is and all of that stuff. And then what happens, right, is somehow, right, I don't know what we'll do. This stuff is all separate. And then what happens is this then triages to your agent, okay? And now, instead of your agent just randomly going off and refunding them or booking them in for a call, the agent says, okay, if I want to deal with this customer, I'm just going to go ahead and actually I'm going to just read from the brain. And then the brain says, yeah, we know who this customer is. Here's the content of the Academy. So take that and then send it, take that information from the Academy and then send it back to the customer. So now the customer has an actual response, right? And I appreciate that is like spaghetti, but that is why it's so important to actually start to level things up and have a company brain. And that's just part of the reason why, you know, I love using Atlas. It makes a huge amount of time saving for me. So that's how we're using Atlas in our company. And obviously we have like workflows like this. You can put inside a workflow, you could actually run an agent, for example, and you can get really, really sort of crazy about the stuff that you do. And as part of, you know, if you grab Atlas for $150 a month down below, we will literally just sit on a call with you and figure out, okay, what are some of these things that we can build for your company? We'll build up the brain and the knowledge. And part of the cool thing about Atlas is you can ask it, once it's built up enough data, it'll take a few days to build up data and you can manually add data to it, is it'll help you figure out how to set these things up and what things you actually need, because it'll have the context, right? It'll know, well, you've got these sorts of things going on here, so I could even come into this and I could say, you know, what courses should we film for CodeSpring? And I don't need to give it any information on what CodeSpring is or what courses we filmed, because it already knows what we've got, and it knows, okay, what are the questions customers are already asking, so then we can go ahead and film things that missing, you know, fill in the gaps. So that's why it's, again, so powerful to have it. So if you want to grab Atlas, I'll leave the link down below in the description. If you want to go ahead and start designing software before you build it, so you can get AI to build it properly, go ahead and grab access to CodeSpring, which I will also leave linked down below in the description.